بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد الصادق الأمين. Good morning, my students. Welcome to our 28th class of American Lit. It's, almost the penultimate week of this. I don't think it is a lengthy course. It's a short course. I feel like this. I'm not sure like you feel the same. But anyway, today our plan is to continue talking a little bit about, Faulkner, and then a little bit about, Heamingway before the presenters come and give their presentation. Last time, I think we had a good idea about Faulkner, about his life, his, biography, his style, his themes, his way of writing. Today we're going to focus more on certain motifs, certain themes, certain conflicts. So it's much more closer look. We'll skip the biography, but we understand from his biography that he, had the spirit to go and fight, to be in an army, and this is something of a gallantry, he's a gallant man. Heamingway might share him the same interest because he wanted to enlist also in the army, and he was enlisted in the army. He fought in Spain, he fought in Italy, this man. So they are like rivals, they are contemporary, they share the same theme, sometimes the same motifs. Okay, we talk about this is a kind of Southern Gothic. We talked about Southern Gothic earlier with Heamingway, and Gothic has to do with the uncanny, the sense of mystery. Of course, this story is, full of mystery. Now, we don't know what happened to, Homer Baron. We don't know why she behaved like this. We don't know why she was holding on her father. So there were a lot of questions, this story. It has a lot of clues, and at the end, we have to figure out why she behaved like this. So mystery is wrapping, the story, and we as readers have to figure. This is one interesting thing about Gothic. It's the sense of mystery. It's a definition. We have the grotesque. What is the grotesque? It is mysterious and frightening. Frightening thing. We are frightened by the deeds, by the behavior, by the action she committed, by the horrendous. A man was killed, a man was, and she kept sleeping beside the corpse for this. She was adamant, she was stubborn, she didn't let anybody go inside her house. These are elements of grotesque. So grotesque means something bizarre, something, frightening, horrifying. Okay, and this is an element again of Gothic. Okay. Now, Gothic also deals with the plight of those who are ostracized. And I think, nobody is more ostracized by, more Emily. She is ostracized by her society. By the Southern society. We understand in the background of the story that the Southern society had this culture of genteel, of the lady, It was, women were, in that culture, were limited. They didn't have free choice. They were limited to the image of the angel of the house. We saw how Emily Dickinson was rebellious against that. So, women were ostracized, and I think in this story we feel in the background of the story that Emily was ostracized, and she was not given her, even when when she started to like a man, everybody was gossiping about her relatives, the whole town, people. So this is kind of ostracism. Okay. We spoke about this story as, a very modern, we have this stream of consciousness, which is, like,
In the mind.
yeah, it's, a kind of narrative which does not follow a chronological order, but it follows like the stream of consciousness. We spoke about the foreshadowing, and we spoke about the symbolism. But did we spend much time on symbolism? Like, what does the house stand for? Yeah, tradition. Like Emily herself, who was like standing for.
Can it be a grave also?
Pardon?
A grave.
A grave.
Yeah. No, a grave for Gomer and a grave for the
I mean, her house, or yes.
for the traditions or the keeping the.
The whole thing is very symbolic because two things the ending of the story is very symbolic. You see, Emily was holding to what?
Tradition, the old. The
She was holding to the past. She was holding on a dead body, So the past was like in previous. It is like dead body. Now holding on to such a dead thing is very pathetic, isn't it? Like we feel, oh, come on, give me a break. What is she holding on? And I think that was a message for all the Southerner because they were defeated, yet they were living in a big illusion of heroism, of chivalry, because as we understood in many of the texts we studied, the Southern culture was a culture of chivalry, was a culture of heroes, of courtly lovers, of romance, So here, like it's a note, a sarcastic note, like, hey, like look at Emily, she's a lady who's holding to the past, and this is not. Look at her, she destroyed herself because she's a victim. She's a victim of her stubbornness. She's a victim of resisting the change, because if you are lacking the ability. I was talking about symbolism, how the whole ending is a symbol. Also, there is something symbolic. Homer Baron, she took an arson. So in her view, he was like a rat. And this is something, it shows how the Southern people conceived, or how they thought of the Yankees. They were outsiders who came to spoil their life. Who came to the money. So we come to the conclusion that this man was not killed, to be immortalized, as some critics might, but it was a kind of perhaps revenge, because it was like, we understand that he was not a marrying man, and we understand that this, he was hanging out with boys. So it's not that, it's not a kind of love, and she wanted to, immortalize him, to keep him beside. It's a kind. Sometimes if you want to revenge, or if somebody wants to revenge, this is like insanity. You find that those people are very eccentric. They might behave in a very strange way. Okay. The machines, the encroaching. So we have industry, modern life is dominating the South, which is agrarian. Okay? Except Emily's house, which was a monument, an eyesore. But it is a fallen monument. It is a fallen monument. Okay. Do you have more symbolism in the story? Do we have more, you want to talk about? Okay. Okay. Ambiguity. We talk about ambiguity. But this ambiguity, is, we have a lot of ambiguity, but the ambiguity is, dissipated at the end of the story by what we call epiphany. What is epiphany? It is epiphany, it is, it's like anagnorosis, like anagnorosis, like it is a realization, a moment of discovery. Like here, it's not the Emily. We as readers, we are like audience, the town people discover that, this Emily who, is a fallen monument whom everybody called her, she's like an eccentric woman. She destroyed herself. She destroyed the people around her. You see? Okay? The way she behaved was not unacceptable. We realized, the audience realized, the town people realized that was very disappointing behavior when a woman kills a man like this and keeps his body for 40 or years or 20 years. Allegory. Okay, the allegory in is there an allegory? The allegory is the symbolism. It is the fall.
This conflict between the southern and
Yes, it is. The whole story. Emily stands for
the south.
the south,
Yes,
and Baron for the north. So what happened to the south? The south was prosperous, prospered, it was, it lived, a life of happiness, a life of heroism, and suddenly it fell, because it didn't continue, because it was like living a life of dream, and it was defeated. So we are talking about allegory, the rise and the fall of the South. And I think allegory is something inherited from the early Puritans writing, if you remember, when we used the allegory style. So allegory and symbolism are sustained in many of the texts we studied this semester. Okay. Now here, we're giving some, example of stream of consciousness. Faulkner is known for his use of stream of consciousness in his works, and the stream of consciousness is like a narrative device which distinguishes modern kind of writing, modernism. The story is read like a townsperson is telling the story of Emily. It's like people are telling from their, mind. It's like listening to his or her thoughts, like listening to the thoughts of people. You don't have this once upon a time motif or once upon a time technique. We have this flashback, this, the story is retold, in a very retroactive order. We have flashback, as we said, start by flashback, and the story begins with the funeral, and then the incidents of the story are retrieved backward rather than forward. And this is something, exceptional. This is something which has to do with modernism, okay? Like modernism, it's a way, a technical way of presenting your text. The story begins with the funeral and the, jumps of the board of aldermen appearing at Emily's house demanding taxes, and then we have, do we have more flashback in the story?
When she went to the druggist,
Uh-huh.
when she went to the druggist, I think there's a flashback.
The smell
Yeah.
is a flash.
Yeah, the flashback of, what happened
Yes.
later,
Smell of-
Okay, the story begins with death, flashback to the near distant past, and leads to the demise of the woman, the death. And the traditions of the past she personifies. After carefully building such descriptive statement, Faulkner flashes back in time and examines the events that led up to the moment of death. Like we started by death. And then we go back to see what happened to this. This is the first flashback. The toggling of events has been skillfully constructed, building suspense, okay? An example of foreshadowing here is when Emily buys a rat. This is foreshadowing. It's not flashback. It's foreshadowing. Yes. It's foreshadowing. When she buys, we understand that she's doing this. When Emily buys rat poisoning, which is later seen as the cause of Homer's death. What is the irony of her response to the druggist about a rat? What is the irony of her response to the druggist about a rat? Like, the irony is like she was, like she thinks of a human being as, she took it not for rats. He thought that she was taking it for rats, but we understand that she was taking it for human beings. This is the irony. What is another example of foreshadowing in a rose for Emily? The smell. In the opening characterization, many descriptive words foreshadow the ultimate irony at the climax ending. Her skeleton was small and sparse. She looked bloated like a body long submerged in motionless water. And that this is a kind of foreshadowing, like the description about her foreshadows.
Also, the fallen monument at the beginning.
Yeah.
She's stubborn and she's serious and stern and everything, but at the beginning he tells us that she's fallen at the end.
This is very paradoxical. She's a monument, but it's a fallen monument. And I think this, as we mentioned last time, encapsulates the paradoxical attitude towards, and even the ambivalent attitudes of Faulkner himself, because he was a Southern people. He cherished, Southern culture, but he denounced the attitude of the Southern people of holding on the dead past, of continuing living in a big illusion. And I think, as I lay dying, tackles this theme of, the Southern people living in the past. And as I mentioned last time, Eudora Welty in all or in most of her novels and short stories also tackled the same problem of those Southern people who did not want to believe that they were defeated all the time. They thought that they were victorious. They did not want to have any communication with the North because they thought that they were different. And that was a problem those writers, addressed. Okay, this is an example of foreshadowing. Her voice was dry and cold, and she didn't accept no for answer. Her house, a fading photograph, smell of dust and disuse, a close dank smell. And when her guests are seated in a faint dust, rises sluggish about their thighs. This foreshadows what she's going to do. She is a woman of, iron. She's very stubborn. So all of this is foreshadowing her deeds at the end of the, like when she took or kept, the body for a long time. Yes, we have something about slavery, like, Faulkner despised slavery and racism, but he admired much of the chivalry and the honor of the Old South. You see? Yes, he was like anti-slavery, but this is the ambivalent of the story. But I just like it, I didn't mention that, the slave Toby was seen like a ghost. And this is part of American Gothic. They use minorities, they use, African American in the background like ghosts. And this is, in the story.
So that's why the servant disappeared and we didn't know anything about him, like a ghost?
Yes. It's part of, yes.
I read yesterday that Toby is reflect for both for slavery and better future. That the name itself reflects.
Sir Toby, yeah. To be. This is where, yeah. Of course, yeah, to be. Toby. Okay. Wealthy northern businessmen were called robber barons, as they were called in those days. They are wealthy people coming to invest to, make money. That could possibly be where Homer Baron got his name, from wealthy people. Okay, I think we talk about symbolism. So you can retrieve this. I don't know. We keep like rotating. It's the. Okay, I think loneliness is one of the motifs. Loneliness. Why is loneliness? What caused loneliness for Emily? Yes.
Detaching herself from the present.
Detaching herself.
And living in the past and the tradition.
Living in the past. So, that was, the result of her deeds. She became lonely because she resisted any change. She became lonely also because we understand that her father, refused any suitor, which, like her father restricted her possibilities of having a better life, a better marital life. So all of this led to her loneliness, and of course loneliness is a psychotic thing, and it's very fatal. It's very fatal. So this is a kind of lesson for us, like evil is there in the human psyche, and it's very important to know yourself very well, to circumscribe evil. I think also loneliness is not just because of detaching, because if you keep resisting, now she made herself like a monument which would deter any change. She was like a heroine who wanted to keep the tradition. But what was the price? Like you are losing yourself. So I think, as we mentioned, this is like in psychoanalysis, it's the self detaching itself from the, its environment. What happens to the self? It keeps, it builds, defensive walls and walls, okay? And then, it retracts until it is, it destroys itself. So this is called destructive mechanism of the self. So this is, what we can say about the whole story. If you have any question, we're ready to answer. And this prepares us, like loneliness, to talk about another story which is full of loneliness. And it seems loneliness was everywhere. It was loneliness in Huckleberry Finn, loneliness with Anne Bradstreet, loneliness with Edgar Allan Poe, your loneliness with so I think one of the exam questions might be trace this theme of loneliness in some of the texts you have studied. It could be a possible, because my exam questions are like motifs. You see what I mean? They keep repeating themselves. So yes, loneliness here. We're moving to another story of loneliness. Hemingway, A Clean Well-Lighted Place. Hemingway, who's a contemporary to Faulkner, and perhaps who's a rival. He had his own style, again his style of modernism, but he has this philosophy of existentialism.
Yes.
Have you read this story, by the way? Like,
Yes.
how did you find it?
Amazing.
Why is it amazing? Illustrate.
When I read the title, I thought it would be trivial topic.
Really?
But when I read the comparison between the old waiter and the young waiter, I love the old waiter. His way of thinking, of his establish everything. He's so sensitive for others. Considerate.
Yeah, he's very considerate. What about the other one?
Selfish.
Selfish.
He's young.
He's not selfish. He has a lot to do.
No. You may think it's a kid. You may think
So this duality, the duality of attitudes, does it remind you, of anything like the duality? Huck and Tom to some extent. Yeah, Huck and Tom, yeah, to some extent. But this duality,
yes.
does it remind you of any American thing?
The clash between materialism and
Yeah, that's it. The clash. We have somebody who's selfish, who cares for his, self, and we have somebody who is altruistic. You know what I mean? Altruistic, like caring for other people. So we have spiritualism and materialism. Like one man, like who was like looking for money, and one man who was, not caring for money at all. You see what I mean? Okay.
It was a gothic story for me. Like doesn't have those aesthetic words and expressions, but the theme itself, the theme of being old and then lonely, it frightened me. And even we say in here every day, دعاء اللهم إنا أعوذ بك من سوء الكبر. So that's there. It's there. The gothic of being.
So you think, yeah, like the fear of becoming old, the fear of becoming invalid. You know, this is very frightening. But this man, look at him. He's old, yet he has his dignity.
Yes.
You know, but he was missing something. He was missing, you know, a kind of communication, like somebody to talk to. You know, I don't know what happened to people at that time. Like, this man is not lacking anything. Is he lacking anything? Is he lacking money? No. He amassed. He's rich, and you know. So I don't know. But he was missing something. Company. Is it just company? Why company?
This is the meaning of blood. If you have no one to talk with, even the paradise is not that big deal if you don't have a company in the paradise itself.
Wow, she's very transcendentalist, you know. Excellent. Yes, Asra?
Well, the whole story is like a paradox. You have a simple plot, but you have a complex meaning.
And this is Hemingway himself.
Yes, although his style is amazing, although we have like 3 characters and 2 of them like minor characters, the meaning or the hidden meaning of the whole story is very complex. He sheds light on the whole American society, the clash between materialism and spiritualism, the lack of communication, loneliness, indifference, and even the title of the whole story, it's like a clean and...
You know, I like this story very much. A clean, well-lighted place, you know.
You said, like, come on, is the cafe a clean place because they didn't drink or something?
Is this place a clean, well-lighted place for you, like our classroom?
Yes.
I don't think I saw you in the morning subdued. So, like, you were not comfortable with this place. Huh? But is this place where you are sitting a clean, well-lighted place for you? Because I see you're sitting all the time in this, you know, seat. You know? Do you think there is a relationship between the place and, you know, the place and the person? Sometimes you feel people are sticking to the same place. They are sitting, they are choosing the same place. Look at Ala. She doesn't want to change. All the time, if I want to know where is Ala, you know, I have to look on this side. You see? Taj is always, you know. I mean, some of you are changing here and there. So you're still restless. You think that this place. So I think it is a kind of, you know, comfort. Sometimes we feel that we are safe in this place. So it's...
The whole room is better than other rooms.
Okay.
Condition here.
Okay. This is the advantage of having a class here. Anyway, I don't want like to talk much about this story because the presenters, you know, are looking at me. They don't want me to spoil their presentation. Who are the presenters?
I am.
Okay, they are 2 good presenters, hopefully. I know Amani, like she has a very nice way of presenting. She projects very well. Okay, so we expect now a wonderful teacher to come and to fill in the gaps.
Okay, good morning everyone. It's our pleasure today. I am Aman Al-Hallag and my friend Nivina Bouon to present a clean, well-lighted place for Hemingway. The outline of our presentation will be as the following. First, Hemingway's biography, then existentialism as a historical background for the story, then the summary and analysis, and the style, modernism, the symbolism, and finally the themes. About Hemingway. Hemingway was born in 1899 in Illinois. He started his career as a writer in a newspaper office at the age of 17. And he participated in the First World War. He joined a volunteer ambulance unit in the Italian Army. He also, as a writer, Hemingway is considered as one of the most significant American authors of the 20th century. During the 20th century, Hemingway became a very important a member of the expatriate American in Paris, and this is actually directly influenced or affected his works. For instance, here we have his work in which he described his experience. The work is The Sun Also Rises, and also in his second work, For Whom the Bell Tolls, he expresses his experience as a reporter during the Civil War. And finally, we have the most outstanding short novel, which is The Old Man and the Sea. And
won the Nobel Prize.
yes, and
Writers who won the Nobel Prize.
Yeah.
Prize winners.
Yeah, he wrote it in the 1952, and in 1954 he is awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature.
Wow.
Here, I'd just like to highlight the term of existentialism due to its close relationship with the major theme of our short story, which is the nothingness. So, existentialism is a philosophical movement that gained popularity in the 19th due to the work of some major French intellectuals, including Sartre, with his work Being and Nothingness. According to the existentialists, life has no purpose and the universe is indifferent to human beings. And they consider different questions according to the personal freedom and the responsibility. In terms of nothingness, which is our major theme of our story today, the awareness of anything in the world is an awareness of nothingness. And the term of existentialism is derived from that the existence is meaningless and the individuals are responsible for giving meaning for their own lives.
So man has a free choice.
Yeah.
Now, this is the opposite of naturalism. Naturalism, like you are a victim, you are helpless, you can do nothing. Existentialism, life is meaningless, life is nothing, but still you can do something. Still you have a choice. And I think here, like in this story, in the background story, like this choice is taken by those people. There is a choice, to fight this nada.
The nothingness.
Nothingness. Yeah, the nothingness which followed. The war, was like some people try to overcome this nada by doing something,
Yes. According to the summary, as an introduction, here I have the opening paragraph of the story. I just highlight some lines, phrases, and words that reflect the setting, time, and the place, and the major characters in the short story. It starts like it was late, and every man had left the cafe except an old man who sat in the shadow of the leaves, the leaves of the tree made against the electric light. So we have the time. The story is set at late night, and we have the place. We are introduced to the place, the first line, which is cafe, and here this might take us back to the title, which is A Clean Will Light the Place. So now we can expect that the title might be, instead of A Clean Will Light the Place, it is A Clean Will Lighted Cafe. And here we have the character of the old man. He is the deaf old man. He used to come to this cafe. He is alone and in despair. He comes and drink. And we have here two characters who are the two waiters. According to the character of the old man, if we want to know more about him, we will need to move to the dialogue between the two waiters. Last week, he tried to commit suicide. One waiter said, "Why? He was in despair. What about nothing? How do you know that it was nothing? He has a plenty of money." So the first thing that attracts me in this dialogue that we are not introduced to the characters. They are unnamed from the very beginning, two waiters. Here we have one waiter said. Later, the writer will say the older young waiter and the younger waiter.
Can you assign in this extract who is the old waiter?
Yeah.
Who is the old waiter?
Actually, I want to start from the bottom. He has plenty of money. This is the young waiter. So this is the young, the old, young, old, young, old, young. Yeah. So according to his belief,
I don't know, you know, last week he tried to commit suicide. This should not be. This should be the old.
Yes, the young.
Because the one who's concerned with the, it's not the young. The one who, you know, kept tracking his news.
Yes.
It should be the old one.
Yes.
so this is the old, young, old, young, old, young, old. I don't. He has plenty of money. This materialistic
Last week he
view.
tried to commit suicide.
This is the young.
This is the, you know, the old.
The young.
The
Now
young. Okay.
Yes, I see.
Now why? Why? Now the one who doesn't know much about the man, it seems like the old man was very sympathetic and he knew much about. But this is very interesting. Here you have.
Yeah, to
you know,
determine
this-
who's the speaker. Yeah.
But if you follow what I'm saying,
Okay, let's follow.
now one is interested. If you're interested in somebody, you know you collect. So we say last week he tried to commit suicide. One waiter said, why? But the one who doesn't know.
This is the
You
young,
know, he was in despair.
the old,
Nothing.
young.
Now, nothing. You know? How do you know it was nothing? He has plenty of money, you know? He has plenty of money. Like, it's not a matter of money. See what I mean? He has plenty of money. But, you know, it's not a matter of money. Like, because the other man thinks that money is everything.
Yeah, I interpret it by this way that he has plenty of money, he's financially good, so he has no reason just to commit a suicide. And this is the young waiter view. Okay. Then about the character of the two waiters, we can clearly see the differences between the old waiter and the young waiter, especially in their attitudes towards the old man. Their conversation or dialogue about the old man reveal their attitudes and their personalities more and more. So we have the young waiter about he seems impatient. He shows his he shows no sympathy to the old man. He actually does not recognize the importance of the place, which is the cafe, as a refuge or as a shelter for such people as the old man. In describing him, he is in hurry. He wants to return to home, and he just wants the old man to go away. He starts by, he's lonely. I am not lonely. I have a wife waiting in bed for me. He's a lonely, so what? I am not. I have my own wife. I have my own house in which my wife waiting for me. So he does not care about the old man at all. However, on the other hand, we have the image of the older waiter. He said, I am of those who like to stay late at the cafe, the old waiter said. So this is totally the opposite view of the young waiter. Here the older waiter appears as his conditions appear similar to the old man, so he easily identifies himself with the old man, and he shows care and respect and for him. Then he asserts with all those who do not want to go to bed, with all those who need a light for the night. So this is a place for those who search for comfort, for rest, to come here and to find themselves. This is according to the old waiter. And the conversation goes among them. There are bodegas open all night long. This is show the younger waiter attitude. There are too many cheap bars in which he can go and just amuse himself. Why he wants this in particular? He still does not understand the meaning of this place, and he shows his careless and no sympathy.
He doesn't understand the value of this place to the old man.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is what the old waiter asserts to him. You don't understand. This is a clean and pleasant cafe. This is unlike the other places. We are of those different kinds. Each night I am reluctant to close up because there may be someone who needs the cafe. So again, this shows the attitude of the old waiter. So the old waiter is just reluctant to close up because there are may someone who needs the coffee. According to the theme of nothingness. Now we have the story. The story discusses different.
Let's go back. What might attract the old man to the place? Yes, it is a clean, well-lighted place.
Yeah.
But what makes it a clean, well-lighted place?
The old waiter?
Huh?
The old waiter?
The old waiter.
Who himself has the same life as
Look
the old
here, the man is deaf.
Yes.
But it seems like, and his deafness, it's very symbolic.
Yes.
Yeah.
But just the fact that the old waiter is there, sharing him his sympathy, even without talking,
Yes.
this is what makes the place a clean, well-lighted place.
Yes.
It's a place where people
Forget about their
get
problems.
together, like they
Get rid of their
consolidate
problems.
themselves by being next to each other,
Yes.
and this is by being adhesive to each other.
Among people.
And the whole place became like a symbol, a holy shrine,
Yeah.
where people get to pray. And nada turns out to be a prayer rather than
Yeah.
nada. It's like a prayer.
Yes.
This is very symbolic.
Yes, so we have the story deals with different themes as loneliness, isolation, and the futility of the modern society. And we also have the disillusionment. Actually, those terms, I just like to interpret them in the light of the story. Now, the story is a post-war. It comes after the First World War. And those themes are represented into two main characters in the story, who are the deaf old man and the old waiter. And those characters share something. They are both they are both old. So we have they are from, if we look at the three characters of the story, okay, they are the young waiter, and we have the deaf old man, and we have the old waiter. The young, he represents the youth, and we have the old waiter, he represents the old generation and the past maybe, and we have the deaf old and we have the old waiter. Now the old waiter in the mid of his age, he is not as old as the old man, so we can analyze his sympathy and sharing the misery of the old man by he is aware that one day he will be as old as this old deaf man.
Can
So
we juxtapose the three characters with the American dream itself?
the American dream.
Yeah. And this
The-
one will, how we can link this, image with, the sandbox, which we are going to see next week.
Yeah. So the
Can we juxtapose, because you have three generations,
yeah
an old generation, a middle generation,
yeah and the
a
young.
young generation. And I think, there is a conflict between the old and the new. You mentioned that there is this illusion.
Yeah.
This disillusionment is a result of what?
Materialism.
Materialism. Like, all of this war, all of the wars fought were because of domination, because of hegemony, because of, they were interested in materialistic gains.
Yeah.
It was not a noble cause like our cause fighting for our freedom.
Our land.
America, Britain were fighting to dominate. Britain and the West to dominate. It was, a war for
Expanded the
materialistic, for expansion, for colonization, for securing,
Yes.
resources, for exploiting other people. It was not a war. So I think this is what happened to the Western civilization. Some of you saw this degradation, this moral degradation in the wasteland. This degradation in here. This is how Western civilization ended. And this is how the American dream,
Yes.
Ended
this is
also.
a version of the American dream in the 30s. The American dream, which
Collapsed.
started by having, a wonderful and ideal, city where people live, a godly life. Here, it's a devilish life. See what I mean?
Yes. The idea of nothingness is clearly represented in approximately at the end of the story in the speech of the old waiter. He speaks to himself as a kind of monologue. He asserts that he has a fear, but what he fears from, let us see. What did he fear? It was not a fear or a dread. It was a nothing that he knew too well. It was all a nothing, and a man was a nothing too. This extract reflects the realization of the meaningless futility of life, in which he recognized even his existence as a human being as nothingness. So it was only that, and light was all it needed, and a certain cleanness and order. So this nothingness this nothingness can be faded by only one way, which is have a clean, well-lighted place, which is presented in the cafe in our story. So if there is no such a place, the only solution is left. The only solution that left is suicide for them. Then he asserts some left in and never felt it, but he knew it was all nada yibus, nada. This means nothingness, then nothingness, then nothingness. The idea of nothingness, whatever, if you ask about what happens in the story, it is nothing, as we see. And what do the characters stand for? Is if you ask about the significance of the character, we can also answer by nothing, since the characters in the short story are unnamed. We don't have any obvious characteristics for them. And what are the theme of the story? It is also nothingness, as we see.
So do you want we cannot say the characters stands for nothingness, but I think
their interest introduce them,
is related to nothingness.
Yeah.
But we agree.
Yeah, we presented them as.
So the way he presented characters, the way he, put the plot.
Yeah, to reflect the idea of nothingness at the end.
The idea of the main theme, which is nothingness.
Yeah, of course they are stand for the dichotomy of the American dream, which is the materialistic and the spiritual. And the last words that end, many must have. So the story is, by this line, the writer is addressing the whole audience. So this story is for all of those whose waking hours are spent in the still of the night. This story speaks to you. For everyone who has ever been alone in the night, when it was dark and all you ever wanted was a clean, well-lighted place to go to. So this is for all, whether they are young or old, whether they are rich or poor. Actually, this is all for my part in the presentation. Now, my friend Nifin will continue.
Okay, modernism, he reflected a modernist view in his literature. He was different from the literature of the before. He reflected the modernist view of the world he lived in, and he appeared as if rebelling against the conventional literature of the before, and he appeared modernist in his style. He was different in his style. It was economic, it was new. It invited the reader to focus on the sentence, on the text that he is writing. It is true that Hemingway had a simple style, but not everyone understood his aims. He wrote this, his writings were for the modern generation, the generation of the world that would understand his themes, the theme of the nothingness, of the loneliness. So he was writing basically for the modern world and not for the previous world. And also his writings are like an iceberg, where there is little on the surface and a lot of things under the surface. So he is different. He's not writing everything on the page. He's giving little things so the reader would infer in the text. Also, another thing that showed his modernist view is that he explored the human consciousness by showing the psychological part. This is the stream of the consciousness. In the story, when he talked about the old man, he said that he felt the difference between the daytime and the nighttime. So he felt it. It's not just he is deaf, how can he know that it is different? But he felt it. He's telling us about it.
The daytime stood for corruption, for dust.
Yes,
And night, stood for
for peace.
security, for peace, serenity.
The modern generation was suffering from the homelessness, and so Hemingway tried in his story to create a sense of place. There was no town, no society. They didn't have this place, this refuge. So in his story, he addressed the modern generation by creating a place, as if he's inviting them to have their own place like the old man. Also, the modern conception about life, that it is short. We see this in the story. The old man's going to die. The waiter is going to die. So like we have this shortness of time, and this is a modern. The modern generation is focused on it. They feel that their time is short, and they haven't lived. They have nothing in the world. Also, the sense of modernism appeared from the culture he showed in the story, a culture that lost faith in God because they felt like life is meaningless, that there's nothing in this world. So like they lost faith in God, and they are depressed. And also they suffered from insomnia. So this generation...
you're talking about the ideology of the modernist. The modernists, like a group of people who lost faith in society, yet maintained faith in art. Yes. So their art is like, a refuge for them. It is well orchestrated. It is a world of aesthetics where they can refuge to. So this is like something. They lost faith in society. They thought that society was losing its values, was losing coherence, was losing patterns. So they maintained they had a substitute of this in their work of art. So their work of art was orchestrated in a very aesthetic way as a kind of supplement, as a kind of substitute, for them. And like the modernists have a different case, the postmodernists,
Secondly, the symbolism. They may appear that the cafe is the only symbol, but actually the story has many symbols.
So what does it stand for? I don't know what it stands for.
It stands as a refuge for those who have no home.
What kind of refuge?
Yes.
It's like a holy shrine, isn't it? It's like a church. It's like a mosque where people get together and like consolidate each other by praying. So it's like a church. Now, what is, because everything was collapsing, all the values collapsing. So people needed to get together. This is what we call stoicism, to be stoic, like to have this endurance. So they need a place to endure the blows of time, to endure this degradation, like to endure, to persevere. Okay, this is what we call stoicism, to be stoic, like to have this ability to stand and to endure these ravages of time, this moral degradation, this moral degeneration.
The second symbol is the daytime. The daytime symbolizes youth. Young people live in the daytime. It is full of life. So the old man tried to stay in the night in the cafe because, the daytime didn't suit him. He was too old for the daytime. And the nighttime, it is the opposite. So, it suited him. It symbolized the late age of the old man and of the old waiter who's close to death.
So let me just take this symbolism. The daytime stands for corruption. The daytime stands for this, and the daylight is not a daylight. However, the light which is needed, which is welcomed at night, is very symbolic for this spiritual connectedness, this spiritual communication, this missing light. It's the this spiritualism. It's like the need for people to get together in order to stand or against like
Ravages of time.
the ravages of time against the deterioration.
You know, the word deaf, the old man is literally deaf and also he's metaphorically deaf because he's isolating himself from the world. Also, the mentioning of the soldier and the girl, it is a reference to the war. It is a symbol for the war and of the country that is going down. You know, the soldiers are expected to defend their countries and not to be in this place with a girl. So, like, the moral issues, they are...
Yeah, there is like, here in the background of the story, this shows how this, you know, Western civilization came to this, you know, degree of corruption.
Also, the shadow of the leaves, it was repeated like about 3 times in this story, and this is a little bit strange because Hemingway has this economic style, and when he writes something, when he puts something, it is important. He repeated it like 3 times, so like it shows that this man is in the shadow. He's resting, so like he's dying.
Yeah, the shadow of the leaves, like this is what, you know, sometimes the shadow of the, it is like a little bit, you know, equivalent with the shadow of the red rock in the Westland.
Yes.
You know, the word shadow is very pacifying, you know. The word shadow gives you security. So the shadow of the leaves, you know, gives you some security.
And now for the themes. The theme of time is a basic thing. We have, as Zamani said, the generations, old, middle, and the new generation. Time was presented in different stages, past, present, future. The old man is a representative of, he represents the 3 stages. He was young, and he was in the middle, and now he is in his old age. Also, the old man represents the future of the older waiter and the younger waiter because they are going to be like him. And they represent the past of the old man because he was once an old, in the middle of his life and a young man. Also, again, the shortness of time, it also emphasized the style when he wrote a short story with short sentences, with short words. So like this symbolizes the shortness of time.
And it's very paradoxical because, you know, we have this sludging movement, you know, what's mean a sludging movement of action. The action, you could hardly see any action, you know, it is very static. So action is sludging, moving slowly, while the narrative, you know, the narrative is very quick, it is very fast, it is very short. So this is like paradoxical. We have a story whose action is very slow, yet its narrative is very fast. This is, you know, an angle which we should look at.
A second theme is the gap between generations, and this is clearly seen between the old waiter and the older waiter and the young waiter. There were no understanding. The younger waiter just cared for himself, for his wife, for his home. He didn't understand the old man. When he knew that he's committed suicide, he didn't even care. So like we have this misunderstanding between the generations.
Okay, try to finish.
The third theme is the nothingness, that the world is meaningless, senseless, hopeless, that people are living for nothing. So like we have this nothingness. And when you look at the story, you think that it is nothing, but actually it does signify something. So this nothingness for Hemingway is not this total nothingness. It symbolizes something. So like for him, for something needs to be nothing without anything. Like still, it's not this nothingness. It has light, cleanliness, and dignity for Hemingway. Finally, homelessness, that there's no town, no family, and no permanent home. Even the cafe, you know, yes, it is this refuge, but still it is temporal. Because at the end, the old man is going to go to his home, and the waiter is also going to go to his home.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, that's
Thank you very much for this presentation. Yes, we end up by this tone of fragmentation. And it seems like we have to piece up things together next time. I mean, next lecture by comparing and contrasting 2 stories. So this is how I'm going to start next class by introduction, or by comparing and contrasting the two writers in terms of theme, style, and attitude, and then we'll shift to our last text in this course, which is the sandbox. Okay? So I wish you would prepare it, the sandbox. Thank you very much.